RESPECT, respect. Find out what it means to me. That is one of the most famous lines we know from Aretha Franklin, right? I don't think most of us understood what that song represented. It was an anthem for the racial and gendered political movement of that time. Aretha is quoted in saying that the song, it reflected the need of a nation, the need of the average man and woman, businessman, mother, the fireman, the teacher. Everyone wants respect. And it's also one of the battle cries of the civil rights movement. Aretha also said once that the power of a movement is to know when the train is coming, to get on board, and to hold your head up high. The fight for social justice, it takes persistence, it takes guts, and knowing and doing what's right. I also believe that we need to be paying attention to what's happening in our community and in this country, so we know when to jump on the train. So my question to you all is, which train are you going to board? Social justice is broad in the context that many diverse issues fall under that work. We think about access and agency and equity, diversity, right? Inclusion. We also think about civil rights and individual rights, and most importantly, human rights. Welcome to Storytime and Wine Report. I am your host, Marjorie Bostwick Phoenix. Some of you may be familiar with this platform. You've seen we've been around for about 2 years now. In our first iteration, we started off at the time when George Floyd was murdered. And I wanted to create this space that people could come and talk about what they were seeing and feeling. I wanted to create this safe space for a dialogue to occur in a way that would inspire us to go back into our communities and be the change we want to see. Previously, we've had groups of from 4 to 20 people at a time on Zoom, and we'd have a subject matter and everybody would share their thoughts and their ideas. But this recorked version, as I call it, is more intimate and focused. With the 2022 elections coming up, they are pivotal to this country, and even more so here in Florida, where we have got to get out and vote in November. So I have made it my mandate to use this platform to educate and prepare Floridians to get involved, get educated, get registered to vote on November the 8th. So that's why I'm so excited to have this conversation today about social justice. My guest today is Dr. Rajni Shankar-Brown. Now, Dr. Rajni is an internationally renowned and award-winning professor and endowed chair of social justice education at Stetson University. She's the vice president of the National Coalition for the Homeless. She's an author, a consultant, a coach, a poet, an artist, a mom, and an equity activist. She is doing it all. I'm telling you, her bio is extensive. You'll be able to read all of that in the description, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the work that she's doing. But I want to welcome Dr. Rajni to the show.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. What a beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful to be here this evening with you. Namaste.
I am grateful to Namaste, really. I've been looking forward to this conversation because there's so many things that I want to ask. But I know the importance of having this discussion is to really have people get a grounded understanding of what social justice work really is and what that looks like. And I think today that we get caught up in this image of the social justice warrior, so to speak, right out there protesting in the streets with a bullhorn and chanting and leading the crowd. And, and on social media, it may look easy, it might even look a little glamorous. And to some, it might look menacing. But either way, there's a lot of work that goes into being a part of a social justice movement and pushing that sort of agenda forward. So let's just start with some of the basics around what you've been teaching and been doing for so many years. And how does one, teach social justice education? What does that encompass?
Awesome. What a beautiful question. And, we're in a time right now where our world has such deep fractures. And so I am just so grateful for this contemplative pause this evening and kind of a challenge to everyone to get involved and to become justice advocates, co-conspirators in justice. So when we talk about social justice, there are many different intersectional kind of pathways that come into justice work. And there is not one form, that we take. As you said, sometimes there's kind of a certain image somebody has in mind, whether that is a protest or, kind of a march. And that is one form we advocate and bring our agency forward. But there are many, many ways that we can all start to advance justice in our communities and in our world, from voting, as you brought up earlier, from educating ourselves to doing inward reflection, to dismantle biases that are so embodied and ingrained because of the society and world that we live in, where we all start to absorb messages, even unconsciously, from the time we come out of the womb. In addition to making sure that we are thinking about justice both locally, but also globally, thinking about the work that needs to happen at micro levels on the ground, but also macro levels, thinking about public policy, systemic and structural change. And so there is a lot when we talk about justice. And I often remind my students that social justice is both a goal and it is an ongoing process. So we have this goal that, sits, and it is full of hope, but also full of layered stories that carry both pain and joy, that calls on all of us collectively to recognize our shared humanity. One of the things about justice, though, it is ongoing work. We never actually just kind of get there and can kick our feet back and say we've arrived. What we know is across the globe, across history, we have seen that, in fact, the march and to bend the arc towards justice requires tireless passion and persistence. It is also requires collective unity. When you think about the civil rights movement and how people came together, unifying with focused mission and heart. And the work is still unfinished. And we are all called to continue to reclaim the dream that Dr. King so eloquently spoke about.
Most definitely. This is long term. I think I read somewhere, that the fight for social justice it's incremental and it extends over centuries of time, right? And just like you said, it doesn't just end in one place. It's ongoing, because I think too, along with everything that is before us now, and I can't say more than ever than before, because all I know is right now we can see it. It's more polarized, right? And it's in front of us. But I do believe too, an extension of the social justice work is that transformative justice that needs to be done as well. There's this healing that needs to be done, because without that healing, we are on this continued cycle, right, of the hurt and the violence in different ways that we're inflicting on one another, and having to fight for rights and all of that. Can you speak a little bit to that healing part of social justice and transformative justice?
Absolutely. And so, when we talk about healing, that is a significant part of justice work. When you think about all of the deep fractures that exist in our world today, so many of them have long legacies of multi-generational trauma that continues to impact individuals, communities, and our nation, and even our world extending out. And so healing becomes so important. And, healing in many ways, it starts, right, first with us as individuals, being able to tap into our own wounds so we don't continue to extend and hurt others and perpetuate violence and inequities. So there's a lot of inward reflective work that has to happen when we talk about justice. But healing, reconciliation, reparations, it is very essential to this work. And when we think about healing, healing happens in different kinds of forms. It can show up and look, in many different ways. So I think about, even for me, educational spaces are spaces of healing. They are spaces of radical possibility. When I look out at my students, I feel such hope. I feel even in the midst of all the daunting narratives and heaviness of our world and fractures and systems of oppression, I look out at our youth and I am so uplifted by so many of them that are ready to dive in, that are already so committed to saying we want to not just march for justice, but live our lives in a way that is aligned with values, aligned with a mission that is focused on decreasing disparities, increasing social equality, making sure that human rights are honored and our shared humanity is honored at the root of how we live. That is healing. So healing can take place in so many forms, but it is essential to justice work.
Yeah, most definitely. And I agree with you about this younger generation. I am very hopeful that I believe that they are going to really be the future of this country in such a way that it's going to just change the landscape, which some people are afraid of that, but I'm definitely looking forward to that, this generation that is coming out of high school and college right now, because how they see the world, how they see their community, all of that is reflected in how they interact and engage, in the world. And they care a lot about these issues and in each other, and in such a way. So, and I've been thinking a lot too, particularly in the state of Florida.
Yes.
We are dealing with, we have a housing crisis right now. We've got a problem with homelessness. We've just ended our legislative session, and it was perfectly clear that the representatives they're more about the profits than the people. And I don't know, have you ever heard of the book The Other America? Yeah, it talks about, this invisible America, right? And more, I feel like, marginalized groups are becoming invisible to our representatives. So we have to come up with creative ways, right, to lift our voices and voice our concerns and tell stories in a way that is going to galvanize others and get our elected officials to listen and to get their attention. What have you seen, or what do you know about in over the years that you've been doing this work that has been sort of an effective, way of doing social justice work that's really made a difference?
So, Marjorie, I love that you asked that, right? And so what I would say is, in systems of oppression, especially as it kind of perpetuates human rights violations, so often those in political office, it's not only that the issues are invisible, but often there's this kind of intentional silencing, intentional almost, attempt to ignore, almost apathy in ways. And so that's where we, the people, have to galvanize. We have to mobilize. We have to organize. We have to, I think, claim back, right, our democracy in so many ways. And that is, it's a lot. And even our youth are feeling the heavy weights of all that we are kind of put on their shoulders. When we talk about housing justice, to your question, in terms of a really good example of kind of movement, I am so excited to share out today. So I'm part of the National Coalition for the Homeless. It is one of the nation's oldest advocacy organizations advocating for people living in poverty and experiencing homelessness. And we have, wide diversity among our board, our staff, the people who are part of the movement, and many people with lived experience. And we have just introduced actually a brand new campaign. It is a grassroots comprehensive campaign to call to end and prevent homelessness, which we know in the United States, we have more than enough resources to move into long-term infrastructure that supports housing justice. And so, we have decided, right, in terms of pushing public policy, we are going to start from the grounds up and get everybody kind of involved. Yeah. And so we have a movement called Bring America Home Now. Oh. You can actually look up the website. And we just had an interfaith, beautiful interfaith launch on April 22nd. We're going to be hosting our Women, Family, Children, and Youth launch, hosted at Stetson, in partnership with the National Coalition for the Homeless and the National Organization for Women Now. So the President, Christian Nunez, and I are co-facilitating this. And then on April 23rd, we actually have our Poverty and Homelessness Conference that will be virtual. We have made it free this year, and we would like to welcome everyone to come participate. We are going to be talking and sharing, diverse stories, diverse voices, but also talking about micro and macro social change and how we, the people, can start to energize and galvanize and actually make movement. And so I'm really excited, and I will be sure to send you the poster and other items as well, Marjorie, for this. But I think this movement, it's been very exciting because we've been able to build the movement, envision the movement, even during the time of COVID, where we've had to use virtual technologies. But we've been able to tap into hundreds of organizations, pulling people together from the NAACP to interfaith organizations, to environmental agencies, to various nonprofits, to our local neighborhood center of West Volusia is now part of our bond campaign. So we have a number across the landscape of the US who are coming together, signing on, truly, working in partnership to start to push legislation forward. We have identified 6 different pillars. Among those pillars, 2 of them that I chair are racial equity and education. And so we are looking at homelessness from an intersectional lens to start to understand we can no longer talk about even housing injustice in kind of silos. We have to recognize racial equity issues that are so deeply connected, the history of racism and how that continues to root and even perpetuate in so many ways homelessness in our nation. I am so uplifted by this movement because it's also multi-generational. We have youth involved. We have civil rights activists who are, as one described, at the end of their life, but also feeling hopeful to see our youth continue the march, right? And able to give that wisdom to carry forward. And so it is just such a beautiful movement. And I am excited. We're planning a children's march in the fall that will happen on Capitol Hill. So there is a lot of movement. And what I would say is, what I love is, sometimes we think that in order to really push massive change forward, we have to wait for our elected officials. We have to wait for certain folks in power. This is actually calling for a flip of that and saying, we all have power. We all have agency. And when we collectively come together and start to grow, our agency really can ripple and we can push forward. We can get the attention, focus, commitment from our elected officials who are there to represent us.
That's right.
Right?
That's
We,
right.
the people.
That's right.
So it is an amazing movement. I could go on for days, but I'll stop.
No, that is so
Yeah.
exciting. I'm so glad that you shared that. And I would really like to attend either one of those sessions next month and learn
Beautiful.
more about this and share the word with people. But you're right when you say we the people, right? Giving, using our power that we have, our collective power. And what I'm always pushing is this collective leadership we all have, right? We are the change. We are the leaders that we're looking for. And we just need to be able to maybe be in a space that cultivates and nurtures that. And that sounds like what you guys are doing as you're pushing forward an agenda, for your community. And I absolutely love it. I love it. So real quickly, we got to check in. I want to talk a little bit about your personal story, but before we do, everybody knows story time and wine. I do this because I love wine. So, and I love it. I believe
joy too. Joy is part of justice. So that wine is important.
And I believe that great conversations and problems can be solved over a great bottle of wine. So I send all of my guests a bottle of, their favorite varietal, and you like the Cabernet. So you got a bottle of that, although you don't have it with you now, but I'm just going to tell everyone a little bit about how this works. So with the wine, we fundraise as well for a charity or cause that is near and dear to my guest's heart. And so we're going to be raising funds for Dr. Rajni's Poverty and Homelessness program. And so we'll have a link with the website where you can go to order yourself a bottle or 2 or 3 or 6 or 12, and 10% of that will go to this exciting program that she is running. And so with the Cabernet, let me just tell you a little bit, and this is what you can expect when you drink this, Dr. Rajni. Okay, so this is going to be full of like a dark berries. It has a little bit of toffee and just a hint of vanilla that finishes it off. It's a nice off-dry, medium body. And it's about 13.5%, pretty good. And it pairs well with, like, of course, beef or blue cheese or beets even. But this bottle is, $25. It's rated 93 points. So it's a really great bottle of wine. So I can't wait to hear about how much.
Well, I love beets. I'm a vegetarian and I love beets. So
there you go. Yes.
But I loved, the wine is called One Hope, right? The company.
Yes.
I love that. When I see the word hope, it just, my heart just was uplifted. So yeah, what a beautiful concept this is too, Marjorie.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Yeah, they're a social enterprise winery. And so that's all that they do. They give part of the proceeds go to different organizations. So, so tell me about your story and your background and how you got into this work.
I love that. Thank you for asking. So I would first say, I would start with, honestly, my mom. So Amma, my first language is Tamil. Amma means mom. And my mom has been so influential in my life in so many ways. And I think one of those ways is from a young age, reminding me that we all have agency. Right. And even when we feel like we don't have a lot of resources, or we can be innovative. And so even as, we had various traumas growing up, hardships growing up, Amma would extend kind of love in action in so many ways. And so I was able to really model that. And I think growing up, I spent so many of my days, even throughout my childhood, in emergency housing shelters, giving back in so many ways. And Amma was always thankful for people who helped, my own parents along in their journey with hardship. And so we would be in soup kitchens or emergency shelters. But at a young age, I started to really grapple with a lot of heavy questions too. Questions around injustice, to have to look into the eyes of another child, and say, they don't know where they're getting their next meal, right? And yet, to have that juxtaposed with where at school you're seeing, trays and trays of food just being thrown away. And to really start to see these disparities so real, it just was very hard. And then also kind of a global perspective as well. So growing up, my mama, my grandmother had cancer, and we went to India, and I did part of my schooling there. And I saw poverty in different forms and ways as well there. And I started grappling around just, human rights issues, right? To see people without fundamental human rights being met, and asking questions about, where is the accountability? What can we do, even as one individual, even as a child, right? What can I do to start to make a difference? I found a lot of hope in libraries. So libraries have always been my sanctuary in the midst of pain. And when I found myself in tears, and I really felt the heaviness, whether it was trauma, vandalism that happened to our own house with racist remarks, or, economic hardships, whatever those trials were, often Amma would turn me to books, and she would remind me to look to people in history, right? People who just have been amazing. And so I was able to learn at a young age, about whether it was Mahatma Gandhi or Dr. King or Margaret Mead, who reminded us, never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world. Wow. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Right. So I would read these readings and even learn about youth, like Claudette Colvin, who inspired Rosa Parks, right? And it created an entire kind of movement of peaceful protest with the bus boycotts. And I found a lot of inspiration and a lot of teachers and guides. I also had the real privilege when I was younger. I entered an oratorical contest that was in connection to Dr. Martin Luther King's celebration that took place up in DC. And I had the chance to share conversation and really have as a mentor Congressman John Lewis, who it was transformative, right? Yes, and so even the words that was shared with me, just to have, someone who I respected so deeply see a light in me and say, shine that. Right, wow. Right. The world needs that. Yes. And I try to do that now to every youth that I work with. So I have a mentoring program at Stetson, Hatters University Scholars. We work with children and youth K through 12. Many are experiencing homelessness, have intersectional oppression in their own life. But even amidst that, right, kind of reminding people we have agency. There's a wonderful book, Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he really talks about how, again, we have to push back in so many ways, resist things that have been normalized. And, even Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, I don't know if you've read that, but beautiful book. Yes. And she also talks about how so much has been so normalized to become complacent. Yes. Right? We don't even start to realize even the systems that we're in and how they are perpetuating injustice.
That's right.
And so I think this critical questioning becomes important.
Mhm.
For me, that's one of the many reasons I became an educator as well, is to help, others to start to ask those questions and tap into their own agency,
That's right.
and to start to spread that out. I see it as kind of gardens. If we continue to plant these seeds, they will grow forward
That's
in
right.
so many ways.
That's right. That's
So
right.
just kind of in a nutshell, to give
That's
you a little
beautiful.
taste.
That's beautiful. Now listening to that, we see how important though history is,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
History was the first thing that sort of piqued your interest, and you were exposed to people who were doing this type of work. That's why it is so important for us to continue to teach history in its fullest, right?
Yeah.
For everyone
Yeah.
to know that. And then also
Yeah.
to meet someone like a John Lewis, to meet, and it may not be someone like that, but having the opportunity to either be mentored, to have the role models, the people that are around you that you can be exposed to, that is going to make such a difference, that can just change the course of your life, right? And so
Absolutely.
all of that is like a
Oh.
build up to who you are now.
And I was just going to say, Marjorie, another kind of pivotal moment in my journey, as you were just saying that, right? It often was simple moments within community where I was able to see how community coming together can make a difference.
Oh,
And so an
yeah,
example was
yeah.
when I was in high school, one of the things I noticed at many of the family emergency and homeless shelters was there was not a space for kids to be kids, right? So in this place, often it was very chaotic because you had people dealing with so much trauma, whether it was escaping domestic violence or having drug withdrawal, or their life was turned upside down because of a natural disaster, so much. And people are crammed together in this space. And for children, I noticed there wasn't a place to study or play games, or you were kind of amidst a lot of adult conversations, right? Constantly. It wasn't even just, there was no place to take a break from that. So in high school, I had a project in mind, and I was a Girl Scout, and Girl Scouts has been a good, big shaping of my life too, which my daughter now is a Girl Scout, so it makes me happy. But, I had a project that I designed where I wanted to bring and build a children's play area in shelters, a place that could be healing, back to the word of healing that we talked about, a place for children to just be kids. And so, with that, it took a lot of community coming together. I had to, I called, a local carpet and company, and they provided rugs and carpets, and a carpenter in our community said, I'm happy to help. I'll come and build a bookshelf, right? And I had people donate toys and board games and books. And soon what we cultivated became a model for other shelters. And it was amazing to me because, this was local heroes and sheroes and human beings who, were generous enough, even folks who didn't have a lot, said, I want to share and help and do what I can. That to me was amazing. And to see what happens when people come together to share their expertise in so many ways, that's powerful. It's something I want my own kids. My son and my daughter now are part of a lot of community engagement projects. And I always remind them, right? Sometimes stop and just take a moment to soak in and to feel the power of community. What happens when people unite and come together? It's pretty powerful stuff, right? And a reminder that we all have that agency.
Yes, most definitely. So it sounds to me like that was the beginnings of your acts of kindness and justice movement.
Yes, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that. So I have an acts of kindness and justice movement that I founded, and I actually co-direct a project with Dr. Felicia Benzo, who is one of my own friends and mentors in our own community. And so, it's been amazing. We've been able to work with students to do things like cultivate empathy and gratitude, and how do we start to cultivate deep roots of kindness, and even start to see how when we translate kindness, and again, going back to my own Amma, what she modeled, right, in very simple ways, she modeled love in action, which often translated to justice in this really neat way. And so we want to cultivate that, especially in our youth. And so we've been able to do amazing projects now. Our current project we've been working on over 3 years, we've started to collect oral histories. So we've been talking about, talking to local activists, from the Honorable Joyce Cusack, to Mary, Ellen, who does our African-American Museum, History Museum, and Pam Kaufman, who does our DeLand Museum of Art. We have such amazing talent right here in our community, but also people who have been part of activism, right? And so we've collected all those stories, and we're working now to build up 2 mural projects. I'm super excited, and we'll be happy to share this out as well. 2 mural projects in downtown DeLand. We've been really excited. We have Barbara Shepard, the Beacon, has been really amazing to say, we'll support you with the wall space. We now are in the process of fundraising, and we have 2 murals. So one actually is a photograph from the 60s, where high school students marched from a Black school, Euclid Avenue, including Honorable Joyce Cusack and folks in our community. They marched all the way down to the Woolworths, where it's where the downtown DeLand Museum of Art is located now. Okay. And they did a sit-in, and this was during a time of segregation. Can you imagine? I mean, high school students having the moral courage coming in, and they shut that Woolworths down. They continued to protest until they helped to change things right here in our local community. Wow. And so one of our murals is actually going to be a mural of the sit-in. And our idea is to also have a historical kind of plaque to discuss and talk about that rich history that is right here, that so many do not even know about.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's one of our murals. The other mural, I'm so excited. My son, Valen Siddhartha, and my daughter, Ramila Sitara, kind of have helped to shape it, especially my son. But it is a tree, and it is a tree of justice and kindness. Oh, and so wow. It is a beautiful, colorful tree. It is kind of rooted, and it's going to be one of our first community murals in DeLand, because we're actually going to invite youth and community to come and participate in painting the bottom of the mural. So we're all going to come together to actually create, this, and it's going to be a space of healing. Part of it is we're also going to have a historical plaque, also honoring lives that we've lost through lynching over time here. So our idea here is to juxtapose the pain, but to make that visible, but also bring in layered healing, bring in our youth, which are, hope for our future. Yes. And to actually have that juxtaposed in a very powerful way.
Listen, it is powerful. And when I think about the attempts that are being made to erase history, this is such a great example to show, they can do what they want. We don't want them to, we'll fight them. But guess what? We still have the power within our community to tell the stories, to let those stories be heard. And I think that the thread through all this entire conversation really is how community can come together, the power that community has, right? To get those things done that are important to them. So this was an amazing conversation. I wish we had more time. We'll have to have you back because this is ongoing. You now have someone, myself, who wants to be involved and hear more about what you're doing, because DeLand is like right in my backyard in a way, and a really great community. But I also think too that they are very, very lucky to have you in that community doing the work that you're doing, also within the schools. You and I have worked together on some other personal projects, but besides that, yes, I'm very, very blessed to have you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajni, for being a guest on Storytime and Wine today.
Thank you. And I extend that thanks back to you too, Marjorie. You're such a light in our community. And this is an example of the beauty that you are creating. So thank you.
And thank you all for joining us. Remember, be the change you want to see in the world. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Namaste.
Namaste.